So today I brought together two friends and colleagues to chat about the Texas energy crisis and hopefully give everyone just a quick sort of blurb about what happened and what legal issues might spin out of it. Obviously, there's already been a ton of lawsuits filed. And we're lucky enough today to have with us Jane Rueger, who co-chairs the Perkins Coie Energy Group with me, and Max Duckworth, a friend of mine, energy veteran who used to run the global trading, energy trading for Constellation. So I thought, I'd turn it over first to Max, who is the energy guru, to sort of tell us what happened and give us the very quick overview. So Max, take it away.
Thanks very much, Brian. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. And I think if we just cover what happened the Valentine's Day weekend and the week immediately following in Texas, I think it's safe to conclude that we had a perfect storm in a number of different ways. We had a generational weather event in which temperatures all across Texas and more broadly the southern part of the continent dipped to pretty close to 0 Fahrenheit. So cold in some places that wind turbines triggered off because of manufacturer warranties and specifications, even before you get to icing. The result of this was that ERCOT, the Electric Reliability Council of Texas, the independent system operator that is charged with keeping the lights on and balancing the real-time supply and demand of the system, was caught very short. A typical February day would have a load of about 60 gigawatts. The load on Monday morning, the day after Valentine's Day, 15th of February, touched 75 gigawatts. So that was a 25% overage. At the same time, as you've all heard, there was a significant shortfall on the generation or supply piece in terms of capacity. Again, a typical February in Texas, you'd expect about 73 gigawatts of supply to be available. Note that the ERCOT reserve margin is quite modest compared to some other regions and power pools around the country. Actually, on that same Monday morning, the 15th of February, ERCOT only had 53 gigawatts of generation available. So the system was very short by about 20 gigawatts, give or take, mainly as a result of the failure of fossil-fired power plants, so gas, to a lesser extent coal, inability for them to fire up, which is not just due to the power plants themselves, but really the infrastructure more broadly, gas production, gas transport, as well as just a lack of winterization that allowed the gas infrastructure to perform so that there would be sufficient fuel supply for power plants. The result of which was that natural gas prices skyrocketed to the high 3 figures per MMBTU, about 100 times higher than you'd expect them to be. Power prices in Texas, as we've all seen, went to $9,000 a megawatt hour. And overall, it was a very difficult week in Texas, beyond just the fact that we had deaths and severe injury and disruption to critical supply chains such as COVID vaccines. But the independent system operator had a very, very hard time. There were losses of voltage and frequency control, rolling brownouts. So a very significant event. But the last comment I'll make is that this is not the first time that such an event has happened in Texas. And in fact, it's well known that ERCOT has been skating on thin ice, so to speak, several occasions previously, 2011 being the year that comes to mind.
Yeah, thanks, Max. And I'll say, just from my experience with the California energy crisis, where we actually have a trial later this summer from the energy crisis that happened in 2000 and 2001, these events have ramifications for decades, in this case, 20 years. So I thought it'd be useful. I will quickly just talk about the potential lawsuits that might arise out of this, of which There are already many filed and many more to come. They sort of fall in three buckets as I see it. You have first damage lawsuits, meaning, lost profits, lost business, property damage, death. Those sorts of lawsuits have already been filed. They will continue to be filed. Generally speaking, suing utilities for power outages is a huge uphill battle. Usually you would have to show some sort of serious gross negligence. However, they're being filed, and when I went online today to sort of do a little digging around, I already saw 3 or 4 different plaintiffs firms trying to sign up for class action lawsuits, just out there signing up people who paid too much or believe they paid too much for their electric bill or had property damage. The other buckets are insurance coverage. So anytime something like this happens, you're going to have insurance coverage disputes. There's so much money involved. So that is inevitable. Also, and I guess the third bucket, which will be very case specific, but of which will probably be the largest amount of disputes, will be related to contractual obligations, arguments about whether performance can or could have occurred, force majeure provisions, which for those of you who don't know what force majeure is, basically act of God, can get you out of some contracts. So we're already seeing as a firm disputes over contract terms, whether or not somebody got a bill that was enormous, didn't expect it, all came out of the pricing, market pricing, and so there's going to be a lot of people going back and look at their agreements with their purchasers and agents, trying to figure out what happened. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Jane, who is our government investigations guru, of which there will be many.
Thanks, Brian. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And in fact, we've got quite a few already announced. FERC in particular has announced 2 already. One outside of ERCOT, they'll be looking at any violations of FERC regulations, statutes that it regulates, or market manipulation in the different markets that it has oversight over. There's a second one also that they are doing jointly with NERC, which would cover ERCOT as well, and deals with reliability issues and compliance with the reliability standards, but also looking to sort of update the work that had been done in 2011 when we had a prior cold snap, and really getting an additional view at what needs to change going forward to make sure that this kind of thing doesn't happen again as best we can. So you've got those. You also have state level investigations going on. Certainly in Texas, we've seen both the PUCT and the Texas Attorney General issuing investigation notices to certain parties, and we expect that to continue. And that's, to me, I think the first point that I wanted to make is it's crucial for anybody who is starting to receive these inquiries that you make sure you've got someone working with you who really can help coordinate all of those different responses to those different investigations, because they'll be slightly different in scope, different focuses in terms of what regulations you're talking about, but it all stems from the same fact pattern. And so you really need to make sure you can stay on message dealing with all of those different investigations. The other piece I wanted to just note quickly here is that we don't want to spend so much time looking in the rearview mirror that we forget about where we're going. And that's something that is very much a hot topic in ERCOT right now. We got a lot of folks who are suggesting a wide variety of market structural changes and big ones, right? They're talking about, should we have a capacity market in ERCOT? We're talking about, should we impose additional weatherization requirements that would be potentially pretty costly, right? And there's also suggestions that are perhaps oriented towards different sectors of the economy. We've got some folks suggesting that intermittent resources should be paying more because they should be paying for generation resources and reserves that are brought on to resolve any intermittent operations that they have traditionally, right? So there's a lot of different angles to that, a lot of suggestions that are being made. And I think the savvy players are really getting involved, making sure that their voices are heard, and you want to make sure that you're focused on that as well, and that you don't get kind of lost in the shuffle when these big changes arise.